in your life, it's acknowledgement of who you are. Because the moment there is an identity crisis in your life, it's definitely going to affect your desires, your direction, and ultimately your acquisition and how you live.
Intet morgenbord uden en ny dag på Diablo.
Nogle gange kan der måske godt gå lidt meget havregrød, Aula og hverdag i det. Og nogle gange tænker man måske, hvad er meningen med det hele? Det er der måske svar på her til morgen. Jeg har nemlig fået besøg her ved morgenbordet af Eddy Mufu, der er motivational speaker og author, og har skrevet bogen The Identity Driven Life. Og vi slår os over engelsk. Good morning and welcome to the studio.
Thank you so much, Danny, for having me.
You are a motivational speaker and you've just written your own book. But how did it all start? How did this part of your life start?
Well, actually, there is this statement I've heard some time ago that said that every life is driven according to the story believed about itself. You know, for a very long time, my own life was being driven according to the story I believe about myself. You know, growing up as a little boy, I kind of find myself in a very situation that was not so beautiful to me from the way I say it back then. You know, I grew up as a child that was being rejected by my own father and also by my own mother. You know, normally these are the kind of people that should be more closer to you, that should protect you, that should cherish you. But unfortunately for me, they were the people who actually don't want to see me. You know, and I found out that my life was being driven with this concept of rejection. I kind of like take my life as the kind of someone who nobody want to associate with. You know, this literally affect the way I live, the way I relate with people, the way I approach things, the way I go for desires. I kind of like being always being pursued constantly by this idea of you not being needed.
So you're actually maybe seeking rejection?
Exactly, you know. I was always like seeing myself, if I want to approach you, I believe I have this concept like, you're not going to want me. Because if my father don't want to have me, don't want to see me, my mother don't want to see me, then who else should want to have me? You know, I was constantly being driven by this identity until I grew up to a certain stage in my life, I kind of realized, man, things have to change. This don't have to be me. Just because my father don't want to see me, just because my mother is ashamed of me, doesn't mean like I have to live with this stigma. Then I begin to start the journey of how do I change this? Is this really my life? No, then I kind of realized, like, okay, there is something different for me. If my father rejects me, doesn't mean like I'm not good enough.
But how do you take the journey from being rejected and then to finding your purpose? Because that's part of the story. You came out on the other side and found your purpose, found your meaning with life.
Absolutely. That's a very good question. And that's actually when I begin to change the narrative. I begin to realize, the moment I gain the awareness, like, hey, you know what? Just because you've been rejected by someone does not mean you're not good enough. Then I begin the journey of like, how do I change from seeing myself as someone who is not good enough to someone who is enough. You know, we live in a life every day where we believe just because someone don't want you, it literally says that you're not good or you're not good enough. You went to an interview because you've been rejected in that interview and you feel like you're not good enough. Actually, that is not true. So the moment I begin this journey of changing this narrative, this story I've always been telling myself since childhood, things begin to turn a different style for me. You know, now when I ask you for something and you said no, actually I feel sorry for you because I know I have what it takes actually to give you to make to something beautiful to offer. I begin to see something good in me rather than seeing myself as nobody.
And I guess that is actually what the book is about. Bogen hedder The Identity Driven Life, og det handler om det her med, at vi bliver født på en måde, men det er op til os selv i virkeligheden at finde ud af, hvordan det så skal gå. Og der dykker vi ned i bogen og slår nogle fikspunkter på det her med, hvordan man kan være med til at bestemme sin egen skæbne og i virkeligheden tage livet i sine egne hænder. Først skal vi lige være selskab med Infernal.
Det her er Diablo. Hele Sydfyns Radio.
Her til morgen handler det om, hvordan man måske kan prøve at gøre lidt ved rotteræset, så der ikke går så meget Aula og havregrød i den, men til gengæld få lidt mere syn på, hvad det egentlig er, livet handler om. Jeg har besøg i studiet af motivational speaker og forfatter Eddy Mufu. Og One of the things we're talking about, your new book, The Identity-Driven Life. What can it do for me? What's in it for me?
What identity-driven life would do for you, it will help you to see your life better, in a clearer picture. Just like we talked about before we started the broadcast of the studio, like we talk about how happy children are. When we're all kids, we live a very happy life until we grow. We start acknowledging the environment around us, and we start kind of like adopt this idea that we have to be attached to something to be a happy person. We have to have all the nice surroundings. We have to travel around the world. The Tesla, the buildings and everything to be a happy person. As a child, you don't actually observe all these things. You don't acknowledge them. You don't see them as a reason of being happy. There's a chapter in this book, I think it's chapter 16 or thereabouts, so where I talk about a friend of mine. There was a time we have to go for a party together. We set an event together, and all of a sudden, I kind of find myself in that event alone. He could not follow me anymore. Do you know why? Because the particular fragrance, the perfume he was waiting to wear to that event did not arrive as he expected.
Oh my God.
He felt like, okay, if I don't wear this perfume, I'm not going to get the kind of reference, the kind of compliment or whatever that I needed. We kind of like find ourselves not being good enough because we are not attached to some certain people, to some certain places, to some certain things. And whereas we don't need all these things to be happy, because we are born naturally to be happy. Happiness is our identity. We don't need to adopt some certain environment or some certain acquisition to be that.
But which part do you think the social fabric or lack of social fabric means in our time, in our self-understanding, the reason we need the Teslas and all that?
But I think it's a programming. It's a wrong programming. It's a wrong system that we're being exposed to, because originally we don't need attachment to be happy. We need them to live. We need them to be, but we don't need them to actually be the person we're born to be. These are crutches. We're meant and designed to stand on our own, and then everything we have around us should be a complement, not to make us complete of who we are. We are already a complete being, and if you don't realize who you are, you will constantly be seeking for things to complete you. Why you are already complete. You just need to acknowledge who you are and begin to build and refine this very beautiful person you were designed to be.
Bogen hedder The Identity-Driven Life, og det er jo fint nok med en bog og fine ord, men hvordan kan man bruge det i hverdagen, sådan her nu? Hvad kan man gøre for at tage det ind i sit eget liv? Det skal det handle om i det efter god musik fra her. Kind mod kind og Medina. Det er Love Isn't Easy.
Det her er Diablo. Hele Sydfyns Radio.
Her til morgen handler det om at finde ind til kernen af, hvad livet i virkeligheden går ud på. Og det er måske ikke kun at skåle Aula igennem, eller sidde med telefonen om aftenen, og børnene er i seng. Måske er der lidt mere til det. Jeg besøger i studiet af forfatter og motivational speaker, Eddy Mufu. Og du har jo bogen, The Identity-Driven Life. We can't read the whole book this morning, so for all the people listening, can you give us a few tips, something that we can implement in our lives today and start the change?
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I think the first thing I would like to advise everyone to implement in their life, it's acknowledgement of who you are. Because the moment there is an identity crisis in your life, it's definitely going to affect your desires, your direction, and ultimately your acquisition and how you live. So the moment you acknowledge, number one, you acknowledge who you are as a person. This is your supreme power. Because when you don't know who you are, you literally don't know what you have. And absolutely affects, you don't even know where you're going. So you begin living this life of constantly living from one era to another era, because now you don't know your direction, you are guessing your direction. So the first thing I will actually advise anyone to implement in their life is to figure out what is your life all about.
But do you think most people know already who they are, but they won't acknowledge it? Or do you think many people have to go on a journey to find out who they are inside?
Absolutely, that's a very big truth. A lot of us know who we are, but we actually lack the momentum to actually activate it. Sometimes we know what to do, but we're not doing it as a person. And this is actually why most of us are still very stuck, because we are aware of who we are, but we are not actually activating that identity we have discovered. But one thing is about the awareness. The awareness does not change you, but actualizing what you have actually discovered, begin the progressing from your acknowledgement and stepping into actualization. Because awareness is like having a plot of land and not building on it. And if you don't build on it, there is no building. So this is one thing about awareness. So number one, when you are aware of who you are, then begin the journey to actualization. It could be little effort on a daily basis that you're constantly repeating. So that is what I will advise everybody. Find out who you are as a person. What is your life all about? And begin seeking how to actualize this identity you have discovered about yourself.
Og det kan du selv se meget mere om. Det er i bogen, der hedder The Identity-Driven Life. Eddie, we could go on for hours, but we don't have the time for it. Thank you so much for coming to the studio and telling us about your own journey and where it led you to and trying to help us. Thank you very much.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
Vi elsker hele Sydfyn. Diablo.